I think we are ready to start. So my name is Marika and I will moderate today's meetup. We want to welcome you again to our QA Spring Fest day 2 by Grid Dynamics. So today we will listen for 2 technical topics from our QA engineers. First will be Dmitrii Shatrov with topic accessibility testing. And after that, we will listen to Igor Lukianenkov and he will tell us about when to start and end your work. And about the rules for today's event. So during the talk, you can ask questions via Zoom chat. Please check that question will be visible for all the participants of the event. And after the report, the speaker will answer these questions. Also, in the end of the event, you can unmute and ask questions by microphone. And please again, check that you have your mics on mute right now and during the talk. So now let's talk a little bit about Grid Dynamics as we are waiting more participants to join. A little bit about our company. Grid Dynamics is a leading provider of technology consulting, engineering, and data science services for Fortune 1000 corporations from financial, technological, and retail sectors. It has been operating since 2006 in headquarters in California and has development centers in the United States, Eastern and Central Europe. As for today, Grid Dynamics brings together more than 4,000 engineers in 13 countries all over the world and continues to grow steadily. Grid Dynamics is a NASDAQ-listed public technology service company with core expertise in big data, data science, machine learning, i.e. scalable omnichannel services, DevOps, and cloud enablement. Here you can see some of our clients in different sectors. There are a lot of well-known companies that we are working with. And if you want to know more about our company and join us, please find more details on our career website. You can scan QR code now or share the link after our career with dynamics.com. Also, if you are interested right now, you can send your CV on email that you can see at the slide. So as I shared all information about our company and I think everyone joined, we will start our event and the first speaker, Dmitrii, will share his screen and start his topic. Dmitrii?
Hello guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Today I want to introduce you the presentation about accessibility for QA, for manual QA. Today we can see how to test our products to make them more accessible for people with disabilities, and not only for them. This is about all of us because we all not get younger. So yeah, and I want to show you common tips and tools for testing the applications about accessibility. And let's start. A couple of words about me. My name is Dmitrii Shatrov, 38 years old. In the QA from science from October 2019, and in the Grid Dynamics almost 2 years already, and working with product about the accessibility. So the main questions which we see today: why we're testing to accessibility, what exactly we're testing, and how we can find the issues and fix them. After that, you can ask me questions. At least you can ask me with the questions in any time. So I will try to answer on these questions. And let's go. The main points about accessibility: this is not important right now. This is boring. This is spend a lot of money. The future first. You can often hear these answers if you're trying to introduce the accessibility testing for the products. But first of all, we should understand what this accessibility is mean. This is practices for making our applications as many as possible usable for people with disabilities. This is blind people. This is people with disabilities about the motorics, touchable, and that's all. So usually we're using the screen readers. This is technologies, tools for helping the people's interact with content on the pages, on the applications, like sites and mobile apps. via the audio, and not for blind people. Also, the people who have issues with touching the touchpads or maybe screens of their phones or tablets. So screen readers can be helpful. The accessibility, working with web content accessibility guidelines. This is guidelines for developing web content more accessible, but VCAC use it not only for web, and also these standards of VCAC, they are pushing into the mobile applications. Instead of VCAC, we also have the accessible rich internet application. This is guidelines how to create more accessible applications. For example, if you need to create accessible list or maybe checkboxes or maybe buttons, you can find how to create right here. And also we have some documentation about the Americans with Disabilities Act, which can be helpful if you need to defend yourself as disabled people, to defend in the lawsuits. So, and actually section 508 also this helpful document. In the world, we have almost 39 million people fully blind. We fix our applications with accessibility for them, first of all. And 246 million people had a low vision. They can't recognize some colors, or maybe they just doesn't have sharpest vision, like people with eyeglasses, like me. So we can helpful for them. Almost the 8% of males and 0.5% of females color blindness fully, so they see in the gray. All colors they can see only gray. Almost the 8% of adults only in the United States have difficulties with basic physical tasks. They can't, for example, use the keyboards or maybe touchpads. So for them, we have the additional tools, and also should create our application for them more accessible. Also about speech disabilities, almost the 8 United States children has disorders to voice or speech. And don't forget about fully hearing loss people. So this is about our users, about our customers. This is a question about money, because the litigation cases only in the United States in 2019 was around 1,500 cases per year. In 20 year, around 3,500 cases, and the last year, 22, we already have almost 4,000 cases. And our customers can lose their money, like Uber in 17 years, they lost $10 million only for 4 or maybe 5 lawsuits, I think. Yeah, like that. And Target Corporation in 2018 year, they are lost 6 million, and etc., etc., etc. And also the Netflix in 15 year lost a lot of money. So, and also don't forget about if your application would be accessible, would be good, you can attract the new users. And this is also can be converted to the money. And first of all, I want to explain. We already testing about accessibility. Actually, not we, the designers. And this is good, guys. They already use their guidelines for creating the mockups for us. And these guidelines already have the VCAP criteria, like contrast of elements, like sizes of elements. We already have this information at the start, but still we should test these mockups and our applications by yourself. I want to talk about screen readers. The most popular screen readers, maybe you can hear about them already, like a narrator for Windows, like NVDA. Narrator, the native screen reader, but it's not so good, and users usually choose the NVDA. So it's better. But the best screen reader, by my opinion, this is a VoiceOver from the Apple for the Apple products. So, and for Android, we have nice tool like TalkBack. Right now, it's a good screen reader, so he can a lot of stuff. And I want to show you VoiceOver more closely. So I prepare the video so we can see like how VoiceOver can be used. Interacting with elements and groups. So this is application, our Appium Inspector. Probably some of us use that. And here I try to interact with Appium Inspector over VoiceOver. So you can't hear the voice from the VoiceOver, but I will try to explain you what's going on, and we probably find some issues. For enabling VoiceOver, we just use the Command F5 button, and that's it. It works. We enable the VoiceOver and can interact with elements by using Ctrl-Option-Left or right for reaching them, and VoiceOver would pronounce these elements like labels. And also we can use the VoiceOver for interacting with the groups, like Ctrl-Option-Shift down or up for going up or down to the groups of elements and use of them. Also, VoiceOver can pronounce for us the status of elements, like this field, deemed clickable field, and we should know which status of this element. For the next, we also can interact with tables. This is kind of different. If our application have a table, like here, save capability sets, this is a table. We can go through the elements not from the left or right side, but up and down in the table. And we can use Ctrl-Option up, down, left, and right for reaching the elements in the table. But sometimes, like in this application, if we add some more elements, this table will be broken, and this is an issue. And I think guys should be fixed that later. This is a table. Next, interacting with list boxes, I found two issues with this list box. So this list box, place it in the group. So not kindly correct. We should minimize the elements on our form, page, whatever, as much as possible. And here element in the group. So for reaching the workable part of this element, I need to go to two steps. And list in the group, this is about. And how I can interact with this element. I reaching this element and tap the Ctrl-Option space, and I can expand this list. Expand, please. Thank you. So by using these elements in the list, I can go also with Ctrl-Option up and down arrows, or just Option up and down. After selecting the element using the space, and this element should be selected, but here I found another bug. After selecting the element, the list closed, and after that he reopened again. If I trying to go to the next element, they bypass. For that, we can just use the tab button for removing that. So this is also bug. If you tired just jamming Ctrl-Option buttons, you can enable the quick nav option for reaching most important elements which you need, like left-right buttons. You can enable the quick nav like here, and after that you can use left up or right up buttons for switching between the types of elements, like form controls. And you can see you just use without texts, you just use the interactable elements. Or maybe you just need the links on the form, and you can switch your rotor to the links and select the link on the bottom and nothing else. Actually, you can find the elements with the additional type of rotor. For using this form, you just need to click Ctrl-Option-U button, and this is also the rotor, but here you can see all elements which contains this type. So the form controls. The best option of this type searching, you can use the search field to find element as much as possible faster. Like the edit, you just type the edit, you can find all edit buttons. Or for example, you can just you need find a save button, and you just write the save, and we have see the two elements like a saved capability sets and save as button. So we select the Save As button, focus on this button, and interact with that. So this is a router. Additional option, you can use the Control Option I and see all elements on this form, page, whatever. And the best option for us, like a testers, like a manual QA, we can find the groups of elements or maybe elements which we don't want to see. Like here, I found all icons, all images. And for VoiceOver, we should remove these images from possibility of select. So for elements, we can just create the report. Guys, remove these images from the screen reader. This is not important elements. We can remove them. Next, what we have, focus. So I found another issue here. If we tap this button, select cloud providers, we already have another issue. After tapping this button, we not focus it on this form correctly. We just focus it on the dialog group, but for the best practices, we should focus it on the select all providers header, or maybe focus it on the whole model and pronounce all stuff which this model has. So here we don't focus it, so this is an issue. And after that, we focus it on the close button. I don't know why. After close button, we go on to the throw this model. So yeah, so many issues. And if we forgot about some hotkeys, or maybe we don't know how pronouncing some interactable elements, like we can find this on VoiceOver help. You just need already tap the control option H to open that. Here we can already see the comments and also the sounds. So you can hear the sound, which you can hear in the work process. So like if your character deleted, you can hear the sound. And this is sound different between another sounds. So yeah, it can be helpful. About VoiceOver, I think that's it. We can look at the issues more closely. So we already see the focus trap, like on the list pop-up, yeah. And we should create the reports issues on that. Most of these focus traps you can find on the carousels or scrollable elements, or maybe pop-ups, like on the second screen, you can see the select button, select list. Yeah, and if you tap this select list, and you can see the list by eyes, but the VoiceOver he's just stayed on this select button. He don't going into the list, and he don't user can't interact with these elements in the list. So this is an issue. On the first screen, we have the loop on the carousel, the third carousel. So we can select the offers, pick up, rating, and under 30 minutes button, but we have another buttons on the right side, but screen reader can't reach them. And so this is also issue. And about tooltips, if we have the tooltips on our application, sometimes these tooltips can be shown like if user make some decision, or maybe tap this button, some button, and we have the tooltip. But if tooltip not for notification and tooltip have the additional information, if we don't focus on this tooltip, this is also focus trap. So we should provide the full information for screen reader. Element sizes, also important part. By VCAT, we have two criteria, like a AA and AAA. They are kind of different, but works like the same. Our elements should be as much as possible larger. And by the VCAT criteria, for example, for iOS, the elements should be 24 by 24 pixels, included the margins to the nearest element. So, for example, on the first screen, you can see the Facebook and Twitter buttons. They both with 20 pixels by their height. but the size between these buttons, this is just 3 pixels. And in this case, these buttons can't pass the VK criteria AA. About AAA, a little bit simpler. Our elements should be 44 by 44 pixels, or for Android, 48 by 48 dp. So, and for element sizes, we have no exceptions, and that's it. About contrast elements, we checking elements less than 24 dp, the contrast ratio should be 4.5 to 1, and for elements more than 24 dp or pixels, there should be 3 to 1 ratio. We have the exceptions here, like logotypes, because the customer choose his logotype, and I think this logotype what he like, so we don't check the logotypes. Also, we don't check the large texts, not by the stuff of this text, but if our text have 80 points or 40 point bold, we don't check the contrast ratio. And also we don't check the inactive elements. For example, we have full primary button, but contrast ratio for this button, as I remember, 3.2 probably. I don't remember and don't write that, but this button doesn't correct, and we should fix that. About disabled button, this is disabled button, so not need to check the color contrast. And here my face. So I think most of us the TikTok, so they have the strange positions for their buttons, and if we use the talkback for reaching these elements, we can find what the optimal way for reaching these elements not optimal. So with a big arrow you can see on the screen, this close button selected after the add sound button, but after the close button we trying to reach the 3-minute, 60 seconds, 50 seconds buttons and photo. I don't know why, but this is what it is. For the elements, we should trying to reaching the most optimal way, and also trying to using our descriptions and explanations what this element should be do before we reaching this element. So we can't use this rule so often as we should be, but we should be try for that. And all changes in the elements, if we create some element on the form, we also should be focused on that element, like notification, like alert, something error message, so etc. etc. Most important part, the labels. The labels should be for the each element, at least interactable element. They should be correct and clear for understanding what this element would be do if user will interact with them. And labels should not be include the states of that element, like enabled, disabled. You can't create the enabled button because this button already enabled. And screen readers trying to pronounce the label, the state of element, and like some additional information like double tap to activate. Yeah. Also, the elements should not be include type, like a button, checkbox. You can't create the checkbox with a label checkbox. So because the screen reader already know what this is a button or checkbox or some pop-up list. And the labels should be not too long because if they would be long, this is a lot of times for using your application for the first time. So the blind people, they are using the screen readers so fast as they can, but if they open your application for the first time, they need to listen all elements, which is this where these elements displayed on the form. So for polite and fastest using your application for the first time, try to use the short labels. Availability for each element. So elements should be selectable for all input devices like a mouse, keyboards. Don't forget about keyboards. So often you can use the tabulation tab button for reaching some elements, but if you're trying to use shift tab for reaching elements before, you can find this combination doesn't work. So check that. And also the elements should be selectable for the screen readers. Another issue, what I usually find, the developers create the lists, but these lists actually not a lists. So if we can see the list like a dot, some line, dot, line, dot, line. So create the lists. So for screen reader, user should be here. He have a 1 of 7 items in the list, 2 of 7 items in the list. So it can be helpful for them. On the second screen, you can see also the TikTok application, and this item with the arrow, this is not selectable at all. So I don't know how users can interact with that. This is an issue. And Elon Musk, again, forgot about selecting these buttons. Alerts, also important part. If we have some loaders or maybe notifications, we should pronounce the starting of process and ending of process. This is most important. So user tap the button, something going on, but he don't hear, he don't know, he just confused. So don't forget about alerts for pop-ups, push-ups, all tool tips, etc. Also, error messages. If we have the error message, the screen reader should be know about that. And how we can find all these issues and stuff. First of all, we can, for the web, we can use the DevTools. We can find with DevTools element sizes or labels. Is this element visible for screen reader or not? A lot of more stuff. Also, we can parse the JSONs from the document object model, and also we can ask the developers, hey guys, show me the code. I want to know about this element more. And they never decline your request. About mockups, also we can check the element sizes, contrast, as I said earlier, just already. Ask the designers, ask the developers, they can be helpful for you. And use the screen readers, listen by your ears, and you can find a lot of stuff like ordering of elements, focus traps, most common issue, and labels. So about contrast, you can use, we have a lot of sites which can be helpful for checking the elements on the color contrast, like a Color.co, contrast checker.com. Actually, contrast checker.com, I don't like that, but the best. So, and also the Figma.com. Figma can be helpful with checking the color contrast. And don't forget, on your devices, you have the color correction. You can enable in the settings, in the accessibility settings, and check your contrast and all stuff with specific selected options like monochromacy, deuteranopia, protanopia, protanopia. And we have the more assistive tools like input tools, like Braille keyboards, some unique touchpads you can see on the second screen or maybe on the third screen. And there's specific joysticks for people with disabilities. They can be helpful for them. Don't forget about that. If you have the option to check them, how they work with the application, try it. I think we're almost done. And this is my thoughts about all this stuff. So your applications should be accessible as much as possible, not for disabled people, all of them. Your applications should be supporting the additional inputs and outputs. Don't forget about that. And also don't forget about safety. So our guys, they're most vulnerable with that stuff. So if, for example, if the guy sitting in the public space and screen reader talk for him, he putting his password somewhere, everybody near can hear this password. Don't forget, keep in secret people passwords. So instruments for testing should be also accessible. I placed myself like here, so I'm working on it. And instruments also should be optimized as much as possible. They should work fast, and they also should be the subject of to strict rules like VCAC or ADA. And I think that's it. Did you have the questions? Somebody?
You can check question in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
We have some.
How should we properly feed the accessibility testing within the, I don't know. When should we start? I can answer the then should we start? We should be start at the start. Try to find something on the mockups before developers starting to create the UI part. So, and find the way how you can mark the labels, discuss with your team how the labels should be created. Maybe you can create some you just can put this label to the mockup and be sure don't forget in the code.
I can add a few moments here if you want.
Oh,
so
thanks.
yeah, it's better to start from the design stage, but it also could be implemented in software development life cycle. On the test stage, like we could add this as part of testing. And there are some products for how to do this in automation manner. So there are some web and mobile SDKs that could be included in the testing process. And you can do this. It's a part of testing, not only to find the functional bugs, but also to find this accessibility bugs and to fix them.
Yeah, definitely. So try to do not make the double work. So accessibility should be checked before we create the application. This is my opinion. So yeah, and another questions: are any of those checks automated? Actually, not. And yes. So you can find some instruments to found these issues. I think you can found it myself. Actually, I'm bored. Yeah, we have a lot of them, like accessibility scanner for Android, for example. So he can help you to find some issues in your application. Like that. I think, yeah, these slides should be possible to access.
We will share the recording of our event of 2 days on our YouTube channel and send the links to you.
Yeah,
so presentation will be in the recording.
Any questions?
Anyways, if you will have questions after the second speech, we will have like general QA session after all the topics. So you can ask them later, and later you can unmute and ask them by mic. So if we don't have questions for now, we can go to the next topic.
I'm still here and I'm waiting the questions. I think that's it. Thank you for your attention. Thanks.
Yes, Dmitrii, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very interesting. Yes, and we will share a video, of course. So, Igor, are you here?
Yes, of course. Just
our next speaker, Igor Lukianenkov, he will share the screen and start his topic.
Okay, yeah, let's start. My name is Igor Lukianenkov. I'm a quality engineer at Grid Dynamics. I'm gonna present you the talk about when to start and end your work. I'm at Grid Dynamics for more than 9 years, in the industry for over than 20 years, and like more than 18 years of that did some QA work. So this talk is not targeted for QA engineers only, while most of the examples would be within the QA in mind. Okay, so just to kick it off, could you guys please, we have the subtopic of this talk, DoD and DoR. Do you know what is that, what that's it? And could you please put in the chat the number if I'm gonna take a look at the results. Okay, I can see some answers.
Yes, most of the answers is the third one.
Okay, yeah. So I did not trick you, but yeah, that's good. That's good that we talk the same language. Yes, the option number 3 is correct. Yeah, it's definition of ready and definition of done. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about it during the talk. So the big plan is like, the question here is like, when you know that you can start your task, and how do you know that you have finished your work? I will show a little bit like what is the problem. We will talk about different project organizations and different types of projects. And we will talk about definition of done, definition of ready, and come to some conclusion. So what is the problem here? Let's imagine that you've met your manager in the hallway, and she or he asked you to do some work, some task. And you said, okay, yes, sure, that's why you pay me salary. And then you got back to your laptop, and task actually doesn't show you any details. Can you start your work? That's probably not the case. Yeah, so problem here is the communication. You would need to spend a lot of time on clarifying all the details on the actual task, and it could cost you even more if the team is remote or distributed. Sometimes it's even worse. It's not like the missing the details. It's like the actual task is not in ready to work state. Like, for example, here it's still in code review. It's basically on the developer side for us testers. Okay, jokes aside. So what is the trade-off here? So you either start as early as possible, or gather as much information as possible before the actual start working. And yeah, from QA perspective, there are two contradicting strategies. Test as close to a final state as possible, or test as early as possible. And our theory tells us that it's way cheaper to fix defects if you found them at the early stages. At the same time, like, it could be not much to test. It could be like the behavior and like requirements could be way different from the final product. It could be changed a lot. And are those efforts wasted? So same issues could be applicable to every other part of the software development. It's not only for QA. Let's talk a little bit about the traditional approach. It is split into phases. Each phase starts when the previous one ends. Process is usually well documented. And yeah, so can we join the party like earlier? Probably not with the functional tests, but we all have heard about something about testing the requirements, testing the documentation. What happens in reality? So in most cases I've seen, and yeah, QA aren't assigned to the project until the actual testing phase starts. At the same time, like the traditional projects are usually very rare, and in most cases we use them because of some regulations. And those regulations usually like documentation heavy, and even if you joined the project earlier, you probably will be creating a lot of documentation just to kick it off. Yeah, what is good in traditional approaches, it is well documented. And yeah, it has like you do know before you start what do you need to, what has to be done by the end of the phase, what has to be done by the start of your phase. And yeah, answering to the question on topic, you start when your phase starts, and you end when the phase goal is met. In terms of QA, usually there's some exit criteria of testing strategy. Basically for QA, it could be like certain percentage of coverage, or defect discovery rate falls below the certain threshold, or just budget or time limitations. Things got more interesting when we talk about Agile. There are like two basic implementation of Agile methodologies. there is a lot of flavors of those, but I will talk about the two main things. So Kanban is basically a queue of stories you pick up from the top, and there is no iterations of sprints. You usually adopted by service teams, but also can be used by feature development teams when there's either fixed pool of work or to be processed, or some hard to predict source of work, like source of requests for work. Scrum, it's a little bit more planning ahead and review. There's some reviews after this the iteration ends. And like for Kanban, usually there's you're trying to optimize either the throughput, how much task can you pass through the team, or you trying to match some SLAs. For Scrum, you're trying to optimize for velocity, like how much of work can you process over the sprint. So where's QA? Kanban is usually like represented by the Kanban board, and while it's a rare case, sometimes there's no separate column for testing, and task is being considered as in progress while it is in testing, and it's like more pure way. But generally speaking, like in most cases, it's more common way to have a separate column for all the testing activities. In that case, you kind of looking at the waterfall in the miniature. You have like the same process, but it is defined for each individual feature instead of the whole project. For Scrum, again, there's like probably two most common ways to organize work. Is like more pure when you have testers as a part of your Scrum team, and some task. Basically, like you have testing tasks created inside the story, and story is closed whenever all the tasks are closed, including testing. And yeah, the overall progress is measured on the story level, not on the task. The other way to organize Scrum teams is usually like by separating development and testing stories, or by completely separating teams and having separate commitment for testing and development. And that usually is called a Scrum of Scrums. Okay, let me stop for a second again. And guys, what do you have on your projects? Yeah, please type in the chat. Agile. Something else. Okay, 1 and 2 again at the same time. Okay, if somebody, probably Gennady. I'm just interested. Like, what do you have? And Isabella, what do you have? If you could type in the brief description by the end of the talk, I will take a look at when the Q&A session will be discussed. Okay, thank you very much. That's interesting. Most of you in Agile, and that's good. Okay, let's talk about definition of done. Definition of done is basically an agreement on what is considered to be done. When the definition of done is met, product increment is created and the team can move on to the next task. It's not the part of the Agile itself, but it is defined in most frameworks. In both Kanban and Scrum, it is defined. It has to be mutually agreed among the team members. So what is this for? First of all, to have some common ground when communicating within the team or with stakeholders, like with downstream projects, teams. And the second, of course, is to protect you from backfire. What did you do? Why haven't you done something extra? Why didn't you found some issue, bug, misconfiguration, whatever? And what did you cover if you talk about the testing coverage? This is the real example from one of the previous projects of definition of done. And basically, like in this example, there's three sections about like code status, statements, task status related statements, and some additional artifacts or outcomes related statements. Yeah, you can take a look. What are the common issues of having definition of done? Most of issues actually come in when the definition of done is enforced from outside of the team, probably by some guidelines or regulations, like company regulations, when it is not accepted by the team and when it's not respected. And it is actually close to not having definition of done. Like everybody in the team understand the word done as they want, and there is no common understanding of the word done. The second one is actually when it's taken literally, when it is somehow enforced or probably degraded from like over the time. You can have more items than you want in your definition of done, and it can require some additional basically like create some additional bureaucracy, can introduce some overhead. It might require like creating some additional documentation, filling out some forms, or attending additional meetings. What are the common issues of not applying? Of course, it's unpredictable status of tasks. Again, the case from the example in the start of the presentation. Project documentation doesn't reflect the state of the project because of basically like when everybody think what is done as they want, project status becomes implicit. And while you have the project manager who might talk to everybody and figure out what is the actual state, it is not reflected in some documentation, and it just goes like this until the vacation of your project manager. Once your project manager has a day off, everything goes to hell, and that's actually happened like 2 weeks ago on my project. Okay, let's move on to definition of ready. We know what the definition of done is. Let's apply this concept for early stages of the development, and of course we will adjust the requirements to the stage and use it as entrance criteria. Without meeting definition of ready, the work item would not be taken into work. So what is this? It's a set of prerequisites for work item to be taken to work. It is not defined in most frameworks, and we will talk about that a bit later. Well, while it's a common practice in projects, especially in distributed and remote ones, it can actually come in different forms. For example, it could be some mandatory fields in the ticket system. So what is this for? Is to reduce the miscommunication, rounds of communication, and to have everything prepared for actually starting contributing to the project. Here's an example from my current project. Basically, like there's, again, 4 sections with there's a statement of what has to be done. There are some like additional requirements that has to be mentioned. There are some dependencies like documentation, like if there could be like some external dependencies in like some artifacts. And there's usually there's some project metrics also included. Yeah, so for pure QA tasks, it could be like requirements are defined, code is committed into appropriate branch. There is a build available in artifact storage, build is deployable, build passes, smoke tests, something like that, along those lines. So let's talk about pros and cons. Sorry, there is a misprint. It should be about definition of ready, of course. So Pros are you have all the information and you don't waste time on extra rounds of communication. That's a great thing for you as a receiver of the task. And cons, so first of all, you delay work being done. Missing information can be treated as excuse not to work, or it might affect the deadlines for the project. It could increase time to market just because of the way you approach to this. So it is a requirement. So you cannot take the work item into work until you have everything compliant. And that means, like in Scrum, it could mean just missing a sprint. So yeah, the tricky part is to have this balance. The problem here is that you're trying to set the basically rules of engagement for the upstream teams without actually like properly communicating to them, at least when you do that without the proper communication. So common issues, again, when it is not respected. How that happens? Usually there's some story missing some details, and you did not take it into the sprint. Then it's missing another some more details, and it's not taken into the next sprint as well. I've seen like a number of cases when like story were missing the like sprints for a couple months just because of missing the details. And then the owner of that story, the requester, goes to your manager and overrides the rules, and you will get the same story again, but without. Now you have to take it, and once you've done this a couple times, you will just open the flow. You will have the second source of the stories in your workflow that will meet the definition of ready. Yeah, sometimes that happens even like without escalation, but just you took a glance on the story. Okay, it looks like it could be taken into the sprint, and we will figure out the details later. And yeah, then you did that several times in a row, and now you just don't respect the rules that you set up. The second pitfall is actually when it's taken literally. When the DoR definition of ready is created, it could be one case. When some time passes and like could be like either less details required or more details required, it should evolve. And when you take it literally, it just either like some statements could be outdated, but if you still respect them, that will create just a lot of bureaucracy. Again, as I already mentioned, sometimes it is enforced by some technical solution. And yeah, the thing that you don't negotiate with, it will just block some work just because it's not complying with all the requirements. And I actually have seen cases when the team had to schedule like multiple meetings just to fill out some fields in the issue tracker for tasks that did not require those details. It might generate a lot of bureaucracy. So common issues of non-applying, a lot of back and forth on clarifying the details. Yeah, that happens. And that happens a lot when you might miss a lot of meaningful information. That leads to unrealistic estimations or just very inaccurate. There's a lot of cases when you have missed some details, and those missing details change the estimate from 2 days to 2 weeks, or from two weeks to 2 months. And of course, it is waste a lot of time of the team. all those interactions, especially when it is remote or distributed team, those rounds of communications are very costly. Let's do some conclusions. So when we start our work, when the definition of ready is met, but should we actually use the definition of ready? My take it is yes, but with great caution. It has to be properly communicated to the upstream teams. Process of the upstream teams has to be updated to match your requirements. It might require some updates, let me say that. And should periodically review the applicability of definition of ready. What about definition of done? I think it should be used. The difference between definition of ready and definition of done is inter-team, while the definition of ready is kind of cross-teams agreement. For the definition of done, it should be common practice. Yeah, you should teach your new members of the team the definition of done, so it wouldn't slide. And you should also explain your definition of done to the downstream teams or stakeholders. That is it that I wanted to share today. So I'm ready to take any questions. Okay, I'm taking a look at Isabella's comment.
So if someone have questions, you can unmute yourself and ask it by mic. We have one question in chat.
What if DoR is not defined in the project? The person I'm working on is backend, and there are multiple DBs and APIs. DoR is hard to define with partial or always changing info. It depends on how you receive your tasks. How, when, how accurate your estimate has to be. You could survive without definition of ready, but planning could be tricky. If we take a look at the example I've shared as a problem statement, here's the one. This is clear, poorly formulated task, and it has to be clarified. The question is when it has to be clarified. Is it your responsibility to clarify all the details, or is it the responsibility of the task creator? And that's where you try to establish those definition of ready and rules.
Yeah, from my side, I want to say that probably for DB case, it is important, for example, to have name of DB and well, all the info beside password itself, of course, and probably access that like I need to actually connect to DB in order to test it. And for APIs, the most important part is actually merge request that is connected to the ticket, because without merge request, you sometimes can't actually find the service that people updating, and yeah, it's hard to work on. And for developer themselves, they just can spend additional 10 minutes, pass you MR version and the service they're working on, and it will be much faster.
Yeah, so again, like it doesn't have to be like the formal agreement or like inside the team, but you can just talk to your developers and say, okay, please provide these details for every ticket that you pass to me. And if it is the issue, you can just try to set it as a rule, and then it could be like you can bring it up on a retro, or like if you do retrospectives, you can talk to your manager and say that, okay, this is the common issue. I lose time every couple of weeks. I lose just a day to figure out some those details, and you can work with your manager, with your team's manager on setting up those rules. Alex is correct. So yeah, you basically, it is the question is how do you make everybody follow those rules? How easy would be like to either enforce them or to just communicate them properly and just not enforce, but convince your team members to follow. Okay, I cannot see more questions. Am I missing something, Marika?
No. I think that if anyone wants to add something, just you can unmute. If no, it's also not a problem, because maybe you can leave questions after in comments of our recording that will be on the YouTube channel. Does anyone have questions? I think no. Thank you so much for attending our event, and thanks to our speakers for such a cool technical topics. And hope to see you soon on our other events, and we will share the recording by email and we will upload it to YouTube. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice evening.